what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy the LSU spring game this Saturday. Probably the least amount of football we have ever talked on this show in the run-up to the spring game. Which makes a lot of sense, right? It's a kind of sign that naturally gets across just how stable things are right now, right? There hasn't been much off the field scandal. There aren't many jobs up for grabs, and the jobs are that are up for grabs, Jake. It's hard to get a clear picture on, right? Like corner, because a lot of the corners that are going to be competing for that job aren't even here quite yet, and so it's also year 2 under your new head coach instead of year 1, and so again, sometimes a lack of news can be a good thing, and I would say in this case it likely is. But it is a Saturday. We're going to be talking about it throughout the week. This week, Jake, just off the surface, if I ask you the question, what are you most looking forward to this weekend? Is there anything that jumps into your head?
I mean, honestly, I'm just looking at the new players that came through the transfer portal probably. I mean, that might be a little chalky there, but it's your first chance to get a glimpse of them really in a game situation in a Tigers uniform because you know these players. Like if a player's in the portal, I would say 90% of the time you know who they are. And you can go back and you can watch film or you can remember a game that you watched where they were involved. But that's not to say that that is going to translate to success in Baton Rouge. Like it's a new place, it's a new setting. And to see how they fit into the scheme, into the culture, into the everything that's already in place in the locker room, like how that's going to play out. Now, you're not going to get a full idea maybe of who they are, but you can see maybe what they can bring to the table. Like Omar Speights is somebody that I'm definitely going to be paying attention to, somebody that I was probably more excited than anybody in this transfer portal window, and to see him right there in the middle of that defense to be a leader, because at Oregon State, he was a dude. Yeah. And I watched him not knowing he would ever end up at LSU, time and time again, circling plays that he made and talking about that guy.
Well, and at Oregon State, no one shut down Caleb Williams better last year than did the Oregon State Beavers. It was by far the Heisman winner's worst game of the season. And I guess the only reason to bring that up is because Omar Speights was the leader and heart and soul of that defense that shut down the Heisman winner, right? So that's always great. He comes out of a position of need. You know, this is chalky and boring, and I should force another answer simply to spur some sort of conversation. But I'm actually really looking forward to seeing Jaden Daniels, and not necessarily even whatever the numbers are going to end up being. Like the numbers will be the numbers. I don't really care about that. I'm more interested in see, Jake, if I get the sense that here you have a player that, because I didn't think he looked good in last year's spring game. I came out of last year's spring game being like,
how do you even remember that at this point?
Because well, last year there was interest, right?
Yes.
Because you had Miles up for the job, you had Jaden Daniels up for the job, you had was anybody else up for the job last year?
When you said you still had Nuss because
Nuss,
he had played.
No, but that's a day when I came out of there and I was like, oh, you know what, Nuss actually looked like kind of the best. Now, as we always say with the spring game, it's not really a great measuring stick for the actual play itself because you're dealing with a very reduced playbook because coaches are paranoid to a fault and don't want to put anything that they'll actually be using on film. And so it's very easy compared to practice to play like center or quarterback or somewhere that you got to make the calls.
It's also like if you're successful, though, with the fundamentals, like that's a good thing to see as well.
Yeah, for sure.
If you can be successful with the basics and not game planning and scheming, it's just those individual one-on-one matchups that you can win. That can give you, a good idea of what maybe the base is.
And so that's why I left last year and I was like, hey, I love the rhythm of Nuss. Miles was all right, and I didn't really like what I saw to Jaden Daniels. Like it actually drove his stock down to me. And then, of course, Daniels ends up getting better. He ends up winning the job, and he ends up having a really good year. But there are still, as we've talked about plenty of times, a lot of areas for growth. And so when I say I'm most excited to see him, I just want to see, does it feel different, right? Does he have the feeling of, because also last year he didn't know he was going to be a starter. He didn't know, he wasn't a leader of the team because he had just gotten there. He had just met people like a couple months ago. Does he now feel like the kind of unquestioned leader of the team? Can you get that sense, and can you kind of feel it almost from afar? So as chalky as that is, it is Jaden Daniels that I'm most interested in seeing on Saturday. And that does kind of make sense also because it will be the improvement of Jaden Daniels that really determines how far this team can go.
Yeah, and remember, you also have a portal window opening up.
Yeah.
So you're going to get an idea of maybe, where the Tigers need to add a player. Now, you have some injuries in spring. You're not going to push it too much, but the coaches are having those conversations. Roster management, maybe where they'd like to add a player here or there. They asked Brian Kelly on Tuesday after spring practice how aggressive LSU would be during this next spring portal window, and he mentioned that they have a couple of needs on defense he'd still like to fill. It doesn't expect to add maybe any major impact players during the window, but some depth pieces at linebacker and edge rusher is where you can see the Tigers add some different bodies there. So maybe not names that but guys that maybe either projects or some nice, solid, they were at maybe a group of 5 school and add them for depth.
Who was the lineman that just entered the transfer portal? God, he's like 6'7", but he plays center. And he was highly ranked. And I know LSU wants to add another interior guy, ideally. We'll have to. I'll end up finding. I'll end up remembering.
Well, you had remember Michael Daugherty, the safety out of this class, entered the portal without even practicing. So there's so much movement.
Yeah.
And you always have to monitor it. And now that you have windows on it, like you got to be selective, but also you have to be active in it at all times because of you're going to lose guys. All these coaches, every coach that we talk to on off campus, I'm like, all right, how are you using this spring practice? And they're all like, look, we know we're going to lose guys. Like even like in some best situations, like Kirby's like, we are going. And Kirby did, like Bear Alexander, a very good defensive tackle, is in the portal. We are going to lose guys. We have to anticipate where we're going to lose those guys and try to replace them, but also, realize where we need to add. In the same product, like if we need an edge rusher, like we have to know that and we have to be aggressive there. You might hurt some feelings, but you have to add some pieces. So you never really had this opportunity before. It's good and bad because you are going to lose players. But after spring, like think about like what it used to be compared to now. If you're like, man, we need some receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where Polian in his new role can really have a huge impact, right? Because he can be scouting the portal constantly. He can be working on that roster management constantly, and he can give you the leads that you're going to need coming out of spring. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.